Well, gosh, golly, wilkers, y'all, welcome to Robert Anton Wilson's Prometheus Rising, Chapter 14, The Metaprogramming Circuit. Man is ignorant of the nature of his own being and powers. Even his ideas of his limitations is based on experience of the pad. There is therefore no reason to assign theoretical limitations to what may be or what he may do. Aleister Crowley, magic. According to Alfred Korzybski, an ideal or mental state is a brain circuit which the brain itself can contemplate, therefore having an idea about the idea, or a mental state about the mental state, etc. There is no theoretical or real limit to the higher order process. It is the infinity within, of which mystics speak. Dr. John Lilly says, in the province of the mind, what is believed true is true or becomes true within limits to be learned by experience and experiment. These limitations are further beliefs to be transcended. In the province of the mind, there are no limits. Stylizations. Mind and its contents are functionally identical. My wife only exists for me in my mind. Not being a solipsist, I recognize the converse. I only exist for her in her mind. Lest the reader exclaim, like Byron of Wordsworth, I wish he would explain his explanation. Let us try it this way. If I am so fortunate as to be listening to the Hammerklavier Sonata, the only correct answer, if you ask me suddenly, who are you, would be to hum the Hammerklavier. For with music of that quality, one is hypnotized into rapt attention. There is no division between me and my experience. I didn't drop the shtick, I just went to a new one. In heavy meditation, when I think of me, I am me. When I think of me and you, I am me and you. When I think of you alone, I am not there anymore. When I think of God, I am God. What I see with my eyes closed and with my eyes open is the same stuff, brain circuitry. Mathematician J.W. Dunn puts the matter in a parable. A painter who had escaped from the asylum to which he was justly or unjustly confined decided to paint the field in which he found himself. Finished, he looked at the result and realized that something was missing, namely himself and his canvas, which were a part of the field. So he started over and painted himself, his canvas, in the field. But, exclaiming the results with philosophical analysis, he realized that something was still missing, namely, himself and his canvas, on which he was painting himself and his canvas in the field. He started a third time, a fourth time, ad infinitum, kind of like I had this mustache and this beard, and I pulled it out. And it's like, just like, hey, I want to like go right up your nose. We think of the paintings of M.C. Escher at this point. It's a fun thing to say about Escher. Or we recall the old folk tale of the farmer who set out to market with 10 donkeys, one of which he rode. After a while, he began to wonder if any of the donkeys had strayed and began counting. There seemed to be only 9. Disturbed, he dismounted and walked around the herd, counting carefully, and there were 10 after all. He remounted and went on riding until worry beset him again. So he counted another time, and there were 9. So once again he dismounted and walked about, counting carefully to find 10. The process is repeated until finally he solves the problem, carrying one donkey on his back and driving the other 9 before him. The disappearing donkey trick is the epitome of ideas about ideas about ideas, paintings of paintings of paintings, etc. The disappearing donkey is the synecdoche? of metaprogramming circuit of the nervous system. The metaprogramming circuit, known as the soul in Gnosticism, the no mind, Wu Shin in China, the white light of void in Tibetan Buddhism, Shiva Darshana in Hinduism, the true intellectual. Why do I just flow over those? Anyway. The true intellectual center of Gurdjieff simply represents the brain becoming aware of self. The artist seeing himself in his painting, seeing himself in his painting, in the painting seeing himself in his painting. In the Zen metaphor, it is a mirror that reflects anything but does not hold on to anything. It is a conscious mirror that knows it can always reflect something else by changing its angle of reflection. This is analyzed mathematically by G. Spencer Brown's laws of forms and analog, not Brown's math, but Gödel's. Gödel's. Anyway. Is that Gödel? It's been so long since Wittgenstein. Anyway, and employing illustrations from the music of Bach and paintings of Escher, of Hofstadter's Gödel, Escher, Bach. It's got to be Gödel. It's got to be. I'm just brain farting, or that enunciation is bothering me. Most of the occult literature of the world. No, I'm thinking of Goethe. That's Goethe, not G louded Odel. I'm thinking of Goethe. My bad. Most of the occult literature of the world, aside from 95% of that is 95% of it that is sheer rubbish, consists of tricks, gimmicks, and games, which the Hindus call upaya, clever ways to trigger metaprogramming consciousness. This generally means leading the student all around Robin Hood's barn as many times as are necessary, until the poor victim discovers that he has created the barn himself. I was the whole time. For instance, a popular game with California occultists, I do not know its inventor, involves a magic room, much like the Pleasure Dome discussed earlier, except that this magic room contains an omniscient computer. To play multivac. To play this game, you simply astrally project into the magic room. Do not ask what astral projection means, and do not assume it is metaphysical and therefore either impossible if you are a materialist or very difficult if you are a mystic. Just assume this is Gedankenexperiment, a mind game. Project yourself in imagination into this magic room and visualize vividly the omniscient computer using the details you need to make such super information processor real to your fantasy. Welcome to Storytime with Taio. You do not need any knowledge of programming to handle this astral computer. Wow, shocking. Excuse me. It exists early in the next century. You are getting to use it by a species of time travel, if that metaphor is amusing and helpful to you. It is so built that it responds immediately to human brain waves, reading them and decoding their meaning. Crude prototypes of such computers already exists. So, we're changing voices apparently. So when you're in this magic room, you can ask this computer anything just by thinking of what you want to know. It will read your thought and project into your mind by a laser ray and the correct answer. There is one slight problem. The computer is very sensitive to all brainwaves. If you have any doubts, it registers them as negative commands, meaning do not answer my question. So the way to use it is to simply start with easy questions. Ask it to dig out of the archives the name of your second grade teacher. Almost everybody remembers the name of their first grade teacher, imprint vulnerability again, but that of the second grade teacher tends to get lost. When the computer has dug out the name of your second grade teacher, try it on a harder question. Switching again, apparently. But not fun, that is too hard. It is very easy to sabotage this machine, but you don't want to sabotage it during these experiments. You want to see how well you can how well it can be made to perform. It is wise to only ask the one question at a time, since it requires concentration to keep this magic computer real on the field of your perception. Do not exhaust your capacities for imagination and visualization on your first trial runs. After a few trivial experiments of the second grade teacher variety, you can try more interesting programs. Take a person toward whom you have negative feelings, such as anger, disappointment, feeling of betrayal, jealousy, or whatever interferes with the smooth, tranquil operation of your own biocomputer. Ask the magic computer to explain that other person to you. Translate you into their reality tunnel long enough for you to understand how events seem to them. Especially ask how you seem to them. Mirrors walk a mile and choose. Forgive me. I'm the impartial orator. The poet prayed, "Oh, would some power the gift give us to see ourselves as others see us." This computer will do that job for you, but be prepared for some shocks which might be disagreeable at first. This superbrain can also perform exegesis on ideas that seem experiments with This superbrain can also perform exegesis on ideas that seem obscure, paradoxical, or enigmatic to us. For instance, early experiments with this computer can very profitably turn on asking it to explain some of the propositions in this book, which may seem inexplicable. Oh, that's so much better. Sorry. For instance, early experiments with this computer can very profitably turn on asking it to explain some of the propositions in this book, which may seem inexplicable or perversely wrong-headed to you, such as we are all greater artists than we realize, or what the thinker thinks the prover proves, or mind and its contents are functionally identical. The computer is much more powerful and scientifically advanced than the rapture machine in the neurosomatic circuit. It has total access to all earlier primitive circuits and overrules any of them. That is, if you put a metaprogramming instruction into this computer, it will relay it downward into the old circuits and cancel contradictory programs left over from the past. For instance, try feeding it on such metaprogramming instructions as 1. I am at cause over my body. 2. I am at cause over my imagination. 3. I am at cause over my future. 4. My mind abounds with beauty and power. 5. I like people. People like me. Remember that this computer is only a few decades ahead of present technology, so it cannot understand your commands if you harbor any doubts about them. Doubts tell it not to perform. Work always from what you can believe in, extending the area of belief as results encourage you to try for more dramatic transformations of your past reality tunnels. This represents cybernetic consciousness, the programmer becoming programming. I feel like I should just knife. Hopefully that'll keep that down. This represents cybernetic consciousness, the programmer becoming self-programmer, self-metaprogrammer, meta-metaprogrammer, etc., just as the emotional compulsions of the second circuit seem primitive, mechanical, and ultimately silly to the neurosomatic consciousness. So, too, the reality maps of the third circuit become comic, relativistic, game-like to the metaprogrammer. Whatever you say it is, it isn't. Korzybski, the semanticist, repeated endlessly in his seminars, trying to make clear that third circuit semantic maps are not the territories they represent, that we can always make maps of our maps, revisions of our revisions, meta-selves of ourselves. Netty, not that, not that. I don't know why I went Italian with that, because apparently Hindu teachers traditionally say when asked what God is or what reality is. Yogis, mathematicians, and musicians seem more inclined to develop metaprogramming consciousness than most of humanity. Korzybski even claimed that the use of mathematical strips is an aid to developing the circuit, for as soon as you think of your mind as mind, then the mind which contemplates that mind as mind, and the mind which contemplates mind contemplating mind as mind, you are well on your way to metaprogramming awareness. Golly, how is it I can say that so cleanly? Alice in Wonderland. Whoosh. One finger. There we go. There we go. Alice in Wonderland is a masterful guide to the metaprogramming circuit written by one of the founders of mathematical logic, and Alice Crowley soberly urged its study upon all students of yoga. R. Buckminster Fuller illustrates the metaprogramming circuit in his lecture by pointing out what we feel puny in comparison to the size of universe, but our bodies, hardware, are puny. Our minds, he says, by which he means our software, contain the universe by the act of comprehending. The seventh metaprogramming circuit is the most recent in evolutionary time and seems to be located in the frontal lobes. That is why the traditional Hindu exercise to activate it is to fix the consciousness in front of the forehead and hold it there. Cross your eyes. Focus right here. Hour after hour, day after day, year after year, until the metaprogrammer awakes, and you begin to perceive, create infinite realities where before there was only one static jail cell reality in which you were trapped. As said above, this circuit is the soul of the Gnostics, as distinct from the self. The self seems to be fixed and firm, but is not. That is, whatever circuit you are operating on at the moment is your self at the moment. If I point a gun at you, you go to circuit 1 consciousness at once, and that is yourself at the instant. But if you are sexually attracted to somebody, you go to circuit 4, and that is yourself until you are orgasmically satisfied or hopelessly frustrated. Most of the preliminary exercises in Sufi and Gurdjieff schools consist in making you aware that the self is not constant but shifts back and forth between the imprints on various circuits. The soul, or circuit 7, is constant because it is, as the Chinese say, void or no form. It plays all the roles you play: oral, dependent, emotional tyrant, cool rationalist, romantic seducer, neurosomatic healer, neurogenetic evolutionary visionary, but it is none of them. It is plastic. It is no form because it is all forms. It is the creative void of the Taoists. If this begins to sound like nonsense, that is inevitable on this level. As Lewis Morgan notes in books on linguistics, there's always comes to a point at which the prose itself becomes wildly incomprehensible, disintegrating into nonsense. The same happens, Morgan notes, beyond a certain point in modern mathematics. Gödel's theorem was once explained to me by a patient, a gentle mathematician, and just as I was taking it all in, nodding appreciatively at the beauty of the whole idea, it all turned into nonsense inside my head. It happens in both linguistics and mathematics because it happens in consciousness itself. Language and math are just models of consciousness. Mind is a tool invented by the universe to see itself, but it can never see all of itself for much the same reason that you can't see your own back without mirrors. Or as Alan Watts liked to say, because the tongue ultimately cannot taste the tongue. Mind is a tool in... Ideas about ideas, mathematics about mathematics, Gödel. Language about language, consciousness of consciousness, the whole Seventh Circuit brings us into what Hofstadter calls strange loops. Like the legendary Coco bird, we follow our own tail around ever-narrowing circles, but unlike the mythic bird, we never complete the process by flying up our own rectums and disappearing. It's a lot like in Robbers, but backwards. It just seems like we're about to self-destruct in that colorful way, and we decide that we have been reading or thinking or perceiving what we have been reading, thinking, or perceiving must be nonsense. It is not nonsense. We are merely confronting infinity where we least expected to encounter it, in our own lonely selves. Physics joined linguistics, mathematics, and psychology in this meta-programming hall of mirrors when Schrödinger demonstrated that quantum events are not objective in Newtonian sense. For 50 years since then, physicists have been struggling to build a system that will get them out of this strange loop. The result has been as funny as a Zen koan. For instance, Niels Bohr proposed the Copenhagen interpretation, which merely says, in the manner of Gödel, that our equations do not describe the universe really. They describe the mental process we have put ourselves through to describe the universe. True enough. And this whole book is a Copenhagen interpretation of psychology and owes everything to Dr. Bohr. But we are still in a strange loop, and most physicists want to get out. Dr. John von Neumann really proved that there was no way out. This is technically known as von Neumann's catastrophe of the infinite regress. It merely shows that any device that will get us out of the first strange loop, the Copenhagen collapse of objectivity, will just lead us into a second strange loop, and any way out of that will lead into an inexorable third strange loop, and so on forever. Everybody's still trying to refute von Neumann, but nobody has been successful, unless you consider sticking a USB card into a Russian doll, but that's back to the book. I can't get out. My horns won't fit through the door. The metaprogramming circuit is not a trap. As Joyce would say, it only looks like as Joyce would say, it only looks like it is, damn it. That's an awkward sentence. Simply accept the universe simply accept that the universe is so structured that it can see self, and that this self-reflexive arc is built into our frontal lobe so that the consciousness contains an infinite regress, and all we can do is make models of ourselves making models. Excuse me. Well, at that point, the only thing to do was relax and enjoy the show. This is what the Hindus call Shiva Darshana, or the divine dance. You are still in life, or life is in you, but since there are infinite aspects to everything, especially to the you who is observing, creating all these models and models, there are no limits. The only sensible goal, then, is to try to build a reality tunnel for the next week that is bigger, funnier, sexier, more optimistic, and generally less boring than any previous reality tunnel. Again, be aggressive. And once you have built that bigger, funnier, happier universe of thought, build a bigger, better one for the next month. Exercises. Numero uno. If all you can know is your own brain programs operating, the whole universe you experience is inside your head. Try to hold on to that model for at least an hour. Note how often you relapse into feeling the universe is outside you. Numero due. Consider the belief system or reality tunnel of an educated reader 1,200 years ago. In 797 AD, how much of that tunnel still seems real? How much of our reality tunnel was an unknown or invisible then? Numero 3. Consider the reality tunnel of an educated person 1,200 years from now in 3197. Because numbering conventions. AD. How much of our reality tunnel will seem real? How much of the 3197 AD reality tunnel is known or invisible to us? Numero 4. Reread Moses' encounter with I am who I am in Deuteronomy. Try the theory that Moses was talking to his own metaprogramming circuit. And that, for all intents and purposes, has been chapter 14, I guess the metaprogramming circuit, of Robert Anton Wilson's Prometheus Rising. Chatelet, do it, Q.